This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Permix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den. Welcome in, folks. Episode number 92 here on the Huskies Warming House podcast. Nick Maxon joining myself, Noah Grant, here on the show. We are excited to have all of our listeners and viewers here for our Christmas special. We're going to be talking a little bit about recapping some St. Cloud State women's hockey, some St. Cloud men's hockey, talking a little bit of, I think, National Hockey League stuff as well, too. And we've got a pair of guests on the show and a pair of guests that Huskies men's hockey fans will definitely know. It's Brett Larson and Dave Shyiak on together for some shenanigans and fun. You won't want to miss that one. And without further ado, a very short abbreviated Center Ice View news and notes and the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup. Center Ice View news and notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to centericeview.com.
Things off, Noah, and the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup with both the Husky squads off until the end of this year. NHL news is what we have to talk about. The big one just recently, the NHL Players Association and the league both submitting requests to withdraw from Olympic participation from the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. Again, COVID-19 has been already impacting the NHL schedule as it is. So a lot of games being postponed in the days up into the league's scheduled holiday break, which actually begins on tomorrow morning. The league had up till January 10th to opt out of the tournament without any financial penalty from the IIHF. There were some tea leaves that said this was probably going to happen. One of it was, Noah, that the host country, China, said that there was a positive test for any athlete, that it would be a mandatory 21 day to 5 week incubation period, essentially. I shouldn't say incubation period. That doesn't make sense.
Isolation.
Maybe a quarantine period. Yeah. So it's essentially the same thing, except incubation. I mean, like you're kind of growing your some feathers and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's when that was announced, I think a week ago, that really, I think, turned the tides of the conversation. And now officially the NHL making an announcement. The IIHF, at least as of now, has not formally announced that they have accepted that withdrawal or have made any sort of official plea. We'll wait on that, but I would assume that would come soon. Could be as early as tonight after we record. As we mentioned, the NHL on pause. Again, that begins tomorrow. That means any team's operations, practices, all that is shut down until December 26th, 2 p.m. local time is when players and teams can resume, go back to facilities. That includes testing. So nothing can happen for those 3 days. So all the players, executives, and coaching staff will actually get 3 days off and rested with their families and their friends. And of course, much heftier schedule after the winter break, including the 14-game set on December 27th. So big news out of the NHL in terms of COVID, as well as Olympic participation, which I know players were mixed about that. But I think overall, missing 5 weeks and not only being from your team, but also in a foreign country, I think that kind of sealed the deal for the decision from both the Players Association and the league. Other slight NHL news, as we mentioned before, this may be one of the more final pieces on this long-standing story, which started in spring. Of course, this coming from TSN's Rick Westhead, who really kind of spearheaded this story. Chicago Blackhawks had the Kyle Beach, the internal investigation. They've reached a confidential settlement. Now, the details of that have not been disclosed, again, as we mentioned before. And this is coming from both CEO Danny Wirtz as well as co-owner Rocky Wirtz of the Chicago Blackhawks in a joint statement with the Kyle Beach's attorney that a settlement had been reached. Again, any of those details as far as money are not disclosed, but happy that there is one step closer to having this all wrapped up. And one other tidbit too, Noah, we should mention is it sounds like the Blackhawks in the league, and I say league very vaguely because I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds like the Blackhawks and that high school player at the time that was assaulted by Kyle Beach. There may be some talks ongoing with those two about possibly getting a settlement as well.
Yeah, some good news on that front. And of course, continuing, that inclusion of diversity and trying to make sure that we are keeping players and personnel safe. We've seen this as a recent trend, not only in the NHL, but in other sports and other youth sports as well, too. So hopefully we are moving in the right direction. It's been long overdue. And we wish the best to Kyle Beach and, of course, the Chicago Blackhawks, the National Hockey League, as they continue to move forward. Speaking of the NHL, it's been a smorgasbord of kind of topics as we wrap up here, the Center SU News and Notes in the NHL and also some international hockey. Let's start in the international stage, shall we? And a little bit closer to home in the Granite City, St. Cloud State's own Jack Pierre highlighting the defensive core for the U.S. World Junior Championship team. You'll hear a little bit more about that in our interview with the two coaches later today. And while the U.S. Olympic team, spearheaded by Minnesota Wild general manager Bill Guerin, at least as of this recording here on Tuesday night. So we'll have to see what that Olympic team is going to look like, first of all, and how Bill Guerin hopefully will still be involved and stay safe while doing it. Of course, doing a very good job for the Minnesota Wild. In GM Bill Guerin, we trust. Next, moving down south to where Nick just visited, kind of sort of ish. Tampa Bay's Andre Vasilevskiy setting an NHL record for most wins in a calendar year with 63 now. He just bested the record of 62 set by Marc-Andre Fleury back in 2009. Same game, Steven Stamkos, 900th career point for him that night as well, too. So a couple of things. Moving on in milestone news. In signing news, we've only got one signing on a player and one signing in the executive office. Let's start with the Detroit Red Wings. Forward Robbie Fabry, a 3-year, $12 million extension, 14 points in 28 games for the forward this season. So kind of an interesting little signing there. It's a lot of money for only 14 points in 28 games. But anyhow, I digress. Let's move over to Vancouver. Pro scout Derek Clancy was named the assistant general manager to interim general manager Jim Rutherford for the Canucks earlier this week. And if you're wondering who the heck is Derek Clancy, former pro scout, which Jim Rutherford hired, not Jim Rutherford, I should say they worked together during the back-to-back Stanley Cup championships in 2016 and 17. Clancy was actually there for 15 seasons since 2007. So talk about a championship winning pedigree. Vancouver with Bruce Boudreau, Jim Rutherford, and now Derek Clancy kind of making the right moves, hopefully trying to get that team out of the cellar. Maybe not so much this year, but moving forward as they still look for their actual general manager, as Jim Rutherford is supposed to be the president of hockey operations at some point there. Second to last topic, moving out to the island. Kind of, sort of. New York Islanders finally winning a game at their new home rink, UBS Arena, about 10 days ago. We just haven't gotten a chance to comment on it yet. The team was 0-5-2 before finally besting the New Jersey Devils and solving them by a score of 4-2. So congratulations to the Isles after a pretty abysmal season, 8th in the Metropolitan Division right now. So it hasn't been that great for an Islanders team that we thought under Barry Trotz would have a much better year than they have. Well, let's move over to our final topic, and a team that isn't doing so great either, but they get a return of a key player that was recently in a pretty big trade. Buffalo, their forward Alex Tuch returning after about half a year with his surgery and rehabilitation. But we've got 3 players in the NHL that do have injuries. Los Angeles defenseman Alex Edler and Winnipeg forward Blake Wheeler, each respectively shelved long-term injured reserve, both of those guys with leg injuries. So wishing them the best in their recovery. And then Colorado star Gabriel Landeskog expected to miss a week or two with a lower body ailment. And once again, welcome in to episode number 92, our Christmas special. We are pleased to have you here. And by we, I mean Mr. Nick Maxon, as well as myself, Noah Grant. Nick, you got the festive lights behind you. It's looking good, looking crisp and clear. What does your Christmas look like? You got any big plans? I think, did you do any traveling recently? What have you been up to, and what are you about to do in the next coming week or so?
Was in the Sunshine State for a little bit this past week. Hence the little bit kind of late recording here, but it was productive.
And the sexy tan you've got going on, but whatever.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I digress from that. I think that's just the colored lights that are at the amber color. I think
you look good.
That makes one of us in the world. But anyways, so as we digress from that, spent a little time down there. It was for some productive times as well as a little bit of relaxation as well. And it doesn't hurt to wake up to 75 degrees and sunny, and also to spend some time on the beach as well. It's kind of the one place that I kind of really truly find a kind of a real actually full body relaxation is when I can be by the beach, hear the waves and the water, and just sort of kind of take the rest of the world out of my head for a little bit. So that was nice to have happen this past weekend. As far as the holidays coming up, just spending time with friends and family, nothing too crazy, local here in the Twin Cities area. And again, just trying to enjoy that time a little bit, because I know next week things ramp up again for men's hockey as we will start prepping as far as the broadcast crew is concerned for the second half of the home and home with Bemidji State, again, St. Cloud getting the second half of that series at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center. So we'll just try to write out the rest of this week before we get right back to work and kind of go from there. But for Noah Grant, besides being stuck in America's wasteland, America's heartland, what are your plans here for the holiday season?
That was pretty. I'll give you that. That's 2 points for Nick Maxon. That was pretty good. That was smooth. Nick, pleasure to have you here as always, and wishing you, of course, a safe and happy holiday in America's not so wasteland. I will be just hanging out here in the desolate nothingness, here with family, hanging out at the home, finally getting to come home for about 7 or 8 days, and excited for the time off, excited to rest and recuperate. Of course, I see this wry chuckle on your face, and I don't know where your mind is going, but I'm scared to ask. Nonetheless,
It's sort of like this, my comedic genius is like Tourette's that comes out of nowhere and it lasts for 2 seconds. And when
you want to revel in it,
you kind of revel in it because you're like, where the hell did that come from? Because, it's not something I ever planned. It just comes out as mouth vomit half the time. So I don't know. I was just like, okay.
Well, I know which clip I won't be using for any Twitter videos ever. So, and Nick goes, well, I'd like to see if I could get back and use them as a Twitter preview, but you got to remember the Twitter password first. And I think you're in trouble on that one. Nonetheless, I am going to be hanging out.
So there you go.
Yeah, it actually hasn't changed. You're just slow or old and slow. But nonetheless, speaking of taking things slow, like I said,
let's be real.
Like I said, I'm getting you a cane for Christmas. But like I said, well, you can add it. I say you can add it to your collection. But 8 days off for me, and then school doesn't actually start until January 10th. So looking forward to the time off. Of course, we're not going to have a show on the 26th upcoming here. We're going to be back on January 2nd. So it's going to be nice to have that time off as well. Speaking of things that we're not going to have for a while, we had our last trivia question in a little while. We won't have one on Christmas Day, the 25th, or on January 1st of New Year's. So the next trivia will be the first real week of January, to be fair, but the second Saturday in January. That's what I'm trying to say.
That'd be the 7th.
Thanks. Look at you.
Will it
be the 7th? Are you sure? I think.
Or is it the 8th?
I think it'll be the 8th. See, don't trust Nick Maxon. Don't let him have his.
I don't trust me either. So,
but nonetheless, some person that we should trust that Nick Maxon and Caleb Peabody might be offended winning first-time winner Ryan Stieg. How about that for the W? A Soda Pod aficionado. Ryan, the subject of the question was actually Ryan Hartman. Ryan Hartman, 4 game-winning goals for the Minnesota Wild this season. This season-high franchise record for game-winning goals in a single season is 8 game-winning goals. That's held by 3 players. Marian Gabourik's done it twice. And which other 2 players? Nick, do you have any idea who these 2 players might be?
I knew Brian Rolston had 1.
Okay,
and then more recently, I want to say it was Granny.
Calgary Island, you are close. It's actually Eric Stahl. 2016-17. Yeah, so that big year.
42.
Yeah, 42 goals that year. So 2016-17 for Eric Stahl and Brian Rolston, and actually Marian Gabourek same year, 2007-08, and then 2002-03 for Gabby as well. Unsurprisingly, career leader Marian Gabourek as well for 43 game-winning goals for the man who didn't re-sign his contract with Minnesota. Not that created a kerfluffle, but nonetheless, we have Kirill Kaprizov now, so who cares, right? But speaking of having a game-winning goal scorer and somebody who can kind of put the puck in the back of the net there, unfortunately, there is a team, Nick, in the Huskies land that could unfortunately use an addition of that offensive flair. Unfortunately, that's the women's hockey team as of late. So we're going to talk about some statistics. We're going to do the same thing for the men's team, talk about some overarching stats and see our thoughts on the women's hockey team's first half and preview the second half a little bit as well. So Nick, let's jump right into it. The women's team 6-11-1 overall. They're 2-11-1 in conference play, 4-3-1 at home, and 2-8 on the road. They've lost their last 4, unfortunately, to both Mankato and Bemidji, and some really tough, tight losses, especially against that Bemidji team in that series. You got a chance you were on hand to actually see that set of games as well too. So we'll get into that as well. Just over 2 goals for per game and giving up just over 3.5 goals against on the season, 27.5 shots for and 35.5 shots against. So getting outshot and a minus 26 goal differential on the season, unfortunately, for this Huskies team. So of course the matchup, I think it was Ohio or Wisconsin, one of the two, they had a 10 goal loss in that one. That definitely doesn't help that margin by any means, but nonetheless, the stats to get into here, 8.8% on the power play and 80.3% on the PK, 47.5% in the faceoff dot, and they've taken 4 more penalties than their opponents. As far as players go, leading scorers, Taylor Lynn with 17 points on the season. She's +3. Yanina Newland, she's at 14 points on the year. She's +8 on the season. Emma Gentry, she's got 9 points and 12 points, and Mackenzie Bourgeray has 9 points on the year. So McKenna Wessel following up with 6, and many of those players with 5 points on the season. So Emma Paluzny, she's got 7 games to her credit, a 3.15 goals against average and a 9.10 save percentage. Sonia Hola, the sophomore netminder, really has taken charge this season. Twice as many games played with 14, a 3.76 GAA and an 8.94 save percentage for her on the season. And then, of course, netminder Carly Reese in 2 appearances for this Husky squad as well. Nick, you got a chance a couple weeks ago to kind of take in a little bit of that Bemidji State series for this women's hockey team. You've heard the statistics. Some of them aren't so pretty. How many of those statistics actually correlate with the way the women's hockey team has been playing? And are there anything that, maybe the statistics don't tell you that are actually brighter spots for this club?
First of all, the statistics that do correlate is the lack of offense. Was it just over 2 goals a game? I'm surprised it's actually over 2, to be honest with you. A lot of the times this team has trouble getting 1 in the back of the net. So it's been a real struggle there. Some of the stats that don't really tell the whole story. You mentioned Emma Paluzny, and you also mentioned Sonia Hola, both of them over 3 goals against on average, and just hovering just about a 0.90 save percentage one way or the other, just a little bit above or a little below. To me, for how much action they get, for how many pucks that are thrown their way, those aren't terrible numbers. And we talk about goaltending statistic as more of a reflection of the team that's in front of them and not maybe necessarily the actual goaltender. That's essentially what I'm dictating this as right now. The team in front has really not given these goaltenders, the best help throughout the season. In fact, it's been kind of a running trend over the last couple of seasons that because the team cannot generate and more so they can't sustain offensive pressure on the other end, that means a very large workload on the back end for these goaltenders. And again, when you're chasing the game, you're taking penalties, you're on the penalty kill quite often, which means, again, your goaltender has to be sometimes your best player. And for Sonia Hola and for both Emma Paluzny, they've been the best players on the squad now for a couple of years. And it's unfortunate that they're not getting as much help in front of them. So there are some bright spots around this hockey squad, but just not enough, unfortunately, to outweigh some of the negatives that have held this team back this season.
Yeah. And like we kind of talk about, the plus minus is kind of a double-edged sword when it comes to that statistic, but only 3 players in the plus column, Taylor Lynn and Emma Gentry at +3, and then Yanina Newland, who has 4 less games played and is still +8, sitting second in team scoring. She's been a real bright spot for this Huskies team this year in her senior season. And, Nick, as we watch this team and we watch, some of the trends as well, obviously they're getting goaltending. The defensive core, I think, has been sound defensively. What does this defensive core really need to do, though? Are they, part of it being a key piece in terms of kind of supporting the play? Have they been hesitant this year? I mean, what is the defensive, responsibility in the offensive zone? Have they been able to generate a little bit, or do you feel like there's something left to be desired just based on the way the scheme has been?
I think there's a lot to be left to be desired, to be honest with you. Now, mind you, when you play that aggressive defensive style, there's a lot of responsibility that's placed on your wingers and on your center too, to make sure that you're covering for those defensive players that do pinch into the zone. You've seen it here and there, but I don't think just in terms of the way that the Huskies run it, it's not really kind of wound into their system. I think there's a lot of offenses left on the table with a lot of their defense that they're not walking the blue line as much. I think they're definitely not pinching down. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago where I was watching this team, and there was an exchange from the corner to the point, and there was, instead of one player hanging down low and another one coming up to cover the point, it was two players that left to go towards the defensive possession. And I suppose if you're the coaching staff, you would rather have two players go up than none at all. But at the same time, there seems to be a lack of communication or a lack of fully understanding the offensive structure to really make it efficient and effective, I think is the two best phrases I could use for that. Yeah. And part of that is when your offense, especially your three forwards, are not in sync, that really does force you defensemen to stay back and to stay, kind of pinched back. And that's what we are getting with this Husky squad, is that they can't activate because they don't feel confident that someone's going to be there to replace them. Number two, again, when a lot of the play is on the boards, and, a lot of teams, when you have defensemen that are essentially pawns on the blue line, it's very easy to cover them. So a lot of them are putting tight pressure on the defensive partners up there. So they can't really move across the blue line and walk the blue line. So they're left with little to be to kind of contribute. So that to me is where it starts. They've got some good pieces in Dale Ross and Grace Wolf, two freshmen. Dale Ross is an incredible puck moving defenseman who uses her feet well, really sees the ice well. I think she's a really good solid piece that they can build on. However, offensively, again, I think and it's not just one person or the other, but the entire offensive scheme just needs to open up, I think, a little bit more. And there has to be more work and more responsibility put on the wingers and that center to be in that big 3 to 4 person rotation, because that's what you see with Wisconsin, how they do it so effortlessly. The Minnesota Gophers use that system. That's how they're able to keep the zone time of over 45 to maybe 75 seconds at times. And that's how they tire teams out. Eventually, you just get completely tired and just can't defend. And where the Huskies have really struggled in these past couple of seasons has been that second period, the period of the long change. They get hemmed in their zone for, again, it seems to be almost a minute and a half, 2 minutes. And then by the time they finally get to the bench, they're dead tired. And we get to the third period, they just have no gas in the tank. So, the defensemen are part of it. But I also do think that the forwards share responsibility of ensuring that the trust is there, that they can execute that kind of offense. And it just hasn't been put together for them this year.
And we've talked about, on the offensive side too, just having forwards that are calm and poised with the puck. I think a great example this season, finally taking that step, and we've talked about her before, is Taylor Lind. Her ability to finally have poise as she's more, she's got 12 assists in the year. She's more of that playmaking player that we saw flashes of brilliance of that 2 years ago and, moving into, last year and this season, but now she kind of puts it all together. I think the challenge for this women's hockey team is when you're not having a lot of possession, then when you finally get possession in the offensive zone, I don't want to say the puck is like a live hand grenade on your stick, but there's not really any other way to put it, where it just feels like you can't establish a cycle because you haven't gotten those touches. Force it. Yeah, exactly.
They force it. And I think that's been part of, sort of the self, fulfilling prophecy is, when they haven't been generating offense or getting that possession, when they finally do get it, all they want to do is put the puck on net, and half the time there's multiple players in front, shots get blocked. They're forcing passes through areas that are low percentage. So again, it's that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy where it starts to spiral. And we've seen that this season. It was something we would hope we would see a step up from, and we just haven't seen that consistently. You've seen it a couple of times here and there, but I think not to the level that I'm pretty sure the fan base for sure, but no question this coaching staff hasn't seen yet either.
It's weird because most of the time, and I think back to like the men's side, we think so much about talking about simplifying the game. It's almost like you want to see this team be a little bit more cuter with some of the plays, being able to take that patience and that poise and make that extra play, or buy more time and space, or look for the better option there. Not to say that a shot on goal isn't a bad thing. We talk so much about how the defensive core needs a chance to be able to step up create a turnover and then filter pucks towards the net. That's something that we've been missing as well too. But in addition to that, having a player that, is able to create and play make and kind of rag the puck, create possession, create a scissor play, something like that. And they've got players. Nina Newland's a great example of that. Taylor Lind is really coming to her own. Mackenzie Bourgeois is going to be a bright spot. Emma Gentry is more of a shooter. You have players that can set her up with those types of plays, and then she's going to find the back of the net with those as well too. But Nick, before we talk very briefly about the schedule in second half, I want to ask, you mentioned Minnesota, you mentioned Wisconsin, Ohio State, now the powerhouses of the WCHA moving into whatever it's going to be. Their biggest piece and where they built their programs, for better or for worse, the way that you look at it, it is recruiting and it is building for the future. In addition, when you look at this club, you talked about the additions of the freshman players in the back end. As you move into the future, is there more help that is necessary on the back end, or do you feel like the forward group, especially, with whatever Nina Newland does after this year, which group do you think kind of could use a little bit more of that youth infusion that starts to continue to produce?
Has to be the offense. Again, that's where the struggle has been. And I don't think we talk about this enough. No, in fact, I don't think we've ever about this point, but the fact that this team struggles with time and space on the Olympic size sheet is concerning too. I mean, you got to remember too, that, when you get to some of these smaller ice sheets, this team really struggles. It's almost like, for practicing. And Steve, yes, I'm talking to you and to Janelle and Molly very directly. It's almost like you want to shrink the ice a bit for these ladies, because again, sometimes I just kind of feel like with that extra 15 feet, there should be a lot of things that you should be able to know in your head what to do, to how to create and almost utilize the space. Sometimes I think like the space is there, they just don't take it, right? They're almost looking just at the net. They're not really, surveying the whole ice sheet to know that if you're on the forecheck, you're coming in on a rush, that, your instincts to go in towards the middle of the ice, when sometimes it's better just to keep the puck wide and to just kind of spread out the defense. Right. So, I don't think it's enough that's being said about, that part of the game, is that when you have 100 feet width-wise to work with, and this team cannot produce offense, that's concerning to me, and that should be concerning to fans, and I'm sure the team as well. So, to your point, just utilization of time and space is huge for the squad, and if they can get some players in that can do that, that can have that high hockey IQ, that can make plays, and we talk about it too, but they need a finisher too, and not just a player from Finland. They need a person that can put the puck in the net. Seriously though, that's been big. Emma Gentry has shown that. Olivia Savard, first 2 seasons have shown that. She's had a down year this year in terms of her production. So, they need someone that can be consistently put the puck in the net. And that's just, again, to me, that's got to be the top priority. However, again, it's a difficult recruiting, sort of storyline, unfortunately, when your record sits where it's at right now.
We talk about it too, is obviously most plays have to come through the middle of the ice if you're any hockey player on any given team, but there's no reason to force yourself out of time and space for the sake of forcing yourself into traffic, if that makes sense. And I think when we talked about that playmaking ability, this ability for the team to maybe rag a puck or kind of, pull the defense out towards the perimeter, then the middle of the ice starts to really open up for this group. And then you get the grade A opportunity that you're looking for. Well, this Huskies team has a chance in the second half. Let's take a look at the schedule. Nick, it's a very hard and heavy and very abbreviated schedule here. They're actually going to go toe-to-toe with the men's hockey team in this matchup, January 7th and 8th, both teams playing Duluth at the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. Then Herbrooks National Hockey Center again, Ohio State comes to town before traveling to Bemidji State January 21st and 22nd. And then Wisconsin comes to town at the tail end of what is going to be a very busy January for this group. February 5th and 6th, it's a home and home against St. Thomas before a subsequent home and home against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And then the final matchup of the season before some WCHA quarterfinal action, February 18th and 19th up at Amsoil Arena in Minnesota Duluth. So Nick, final thoughts on the women's hockey team before we move to the men's team. What do they got to focus on in the second half as they move into kind of playing for the end of that February in the WCHA quarterfinals?
2 things. One game at a time. You can't, look up to, as you mentioned, January 18th or the 28th or whatnot. You just have to take it one game at a time. But you have to build on something too, right? And for them, it's execute the details. To me, there's a lot of details in the game that they're cheating. I called them out before. I'm going to call them out again. They are sometimes cheating, not engaging in puck battles or doing flybys of one hand or the stick. That can't continue to happen. That shows a team that does not have confidence to go into the boards and win a puck battle. You got to go in there and work for it, right? Hockey's not a game that's handed to you. You got to earn every single piece of possession of the puck, and every single shot goes on net that's earned. So I think that those are the things they have to really just sort of commit to. I think that's the word that has to be thrown. They have to commit to the details, and if they do that, and then again, just one shift at a time, you just win the shift, win the period, win the game, right? It sounds so simple, it sounds cliche, but that's the way the team has to do that. Find it's something to build off of. They can do that. You never know, right? Things can happen. You can go on a run, but you can't do that by looking at what's in the past. What's done is done, and it's maybe definitely the numbers and the results are not pretty, but it's over and done with. You can't go back and change it. But what you can look forward to is that empty and blank sheet of paper that's in front of you. You can still write that storybook ending, and it starts with game one after the holiday break.
Yeah, putting together a good 60 minutes, trying to put together another one after that, and continuing to build and have some character building wins on top of that. Speaking of having some character, why don't we move on to the men's hockey, our last topic of the regular portion of the show before we head on to our interview. Same story, Nick. Let's talk about some stats a little bit brighter here on the men's side. Of course, 10-6 overall, 4-4 in NCHC action, and an identical 5-3 record at home and on the road. They've lost one game as of late. Of course, the loss to North Dakota is their most recent swing in a split. 3.5 goals for per game and just over 2 goals against per game. Of course, probably the St. Thomas and the UND matchups might skew that, but even so, 32 shots for per game and 26 shots against, and a plus 24 goal differential. Now, I mentioned St. Thomas, I mentioned UND. Take those 2 games out and make them 1-goal victories in the 2 blowout games. They're still +8 on the season after all of that. So they are finding some production at the right times, and even a clunker of a weekend against Western Michigan as well, too. 33.3% of the power play, one of the best that we've seen in recent St. Cloud State franchise history, and just under 85% on the PK, just over 52.5% in the faceoff dot, and they've taken 9 fewer penalties than their opponents. Before I get your opinion, Nick, top scorers for this team, the guy that's been on the top of this list and in the top of the H chart, I guess, technically, Kevin Fitzgerald, 8 goals, 13 apples, 21 points, and a plus 11 rating for him. What a year he is having in his 5th year in the Cardinal red and black. Houston Brodzinski falling up just behind him, I believe, leading the team in goals, 9 goals on the season, 13 total points, and a +3 marker for him. Yami Krannila, 7 goals, 5 assists, 12 points for him. Nick Perbix has 10 assists on the season and just a single tuck for 11 points and a +2 rating for him. So definitely more assist heavy for Nick Perbix. So I don't even know if he's gotten ramped up yet. That's a great sign for the Huskies if he starts to find the back of the net, especially on special teams. And then a slew of players with 10 points. Nolan Walker, Zach Okabe, Vieti Mietin, and Jack Pierre, 10 points for him. And you wonder why he's a World Junior candidate. Good for him. Of course, on the goaltending side, David Renick's been the man carrying the workload for most of the season, 14 games on the season, just over 2 goals against average and a 9.22 save percentage. Great season for him. Jackson Castor looking strong in the 3 appearances that he's had, a 1.45 GAA and a 9.45 save percentage. And Joey Lamoureux, 1 contest for him, 9.47 save percentage and just over 2.5 goals against per game. Nick, a lot of ups and downs for this men's hockey team here in the first half. A good non-conference schedule minus, getting pulled back into reality, so to speak, and some NCHC action that left them 4-4. What have you liked from the Huskies in the first half, and what things do you feel like they need to kind of clean up and build on for the second half?
Liked the 5-on-5 play for the most part, although I do think there needs to be a little bit better execution offensively, 5-on-5. But again, specialty teams, you mentioned the power play. Eventually that number will come down. There's no way that's sustainable. Penalty kill was over 90%, but one of the things I need to clean up is they're just taking way too many penalties. That's probably the biggest hurdle right now is disciplinary. They need to just be able to get that guy stay out of the box. And for Brett Larson, the squad. You know that they're most successful when Brett Larson can run 4 lines and can cycle his players. And again, when you're killing penalties, that means guys like VT, guys like Sam Henches are now out there killing penalties. They're there to score goals. So Sam Henches, hope he is healthy to come back at the second half of the season. We'll be asking coaches about that here a little bit later on in the show. But that's the big thing to me, is discipline. If you can do that, you have everything else, I think, going for you. Specialty teams are there. 5-on-5 is there for the most part, maybe some lapses here and there, but again, ebbs and flows are just part of the game of hockey. So a lot to like, but again, I think their biggest hindrance, if they can clean up their discipline and stay out of the boxes as much as they have, I think that does kind of correct some of those other kind of domino effects that happen because they spend a lot of time also shorthanded.
Yeah, the penalty kill has looked quite all right through this season. Dipped a little bit in recent weekends, but still was looking all right before the North Dakota series, and still is looking okay too. And one of your biggest penalty killers, of course, Nick, as you know, as always, is goaltending, right? David Renick. And, here's a guy that, we've talked about the success he had early on in his career. And part of that was having a really good hockey team in front of him that didn't allow a whole lot of shots on net towards the Huskies cage. But David Renick, the Los Angeles Kings draft pick, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate his performance this season? I guess for me, I feel like he's given Huskies fans a reason to believe ever since kind of pushing into tournament time last year.
He's an 8 out of 10. Again, he's been good for 10 months, right? We wondered when we would see the step up. We saw it probably starting last February when this team, again, you mentioned sort of that, what was that transition weekend? And that was, again, getting buried up at Amsoil Arena by Duluth. It was an ugly, just team was never even in that game. And it just sort of was kind of like that, that wake up sort of contest for this club. And I think they just never looked back on that. And we haven't really had that this season yet, which is good. But, it probably will happen, and you almost kind of, you kind of want it to happen now versus later. Right. And for the other good news is I don't think this team has peaked just yet. There's one thing about, you talk about the teams, are they peaking too early? That's the one thing I think that the Huskies haven't done just yet. Is I think, again, with Sam Henches being not playing more than, I think he's 6 games or 8 games so far this season. That's not much. Having him back in the lineup, if and when he's healthy, is really going to give a nice spark offensively to the squad. He brings a lot of speed, a lot of determination on the ice. And so that translates back to David Renick for him. He's a guy that has taken that next step. He's been level. You almost wonder, is there another level to his game? That the NHL, the LA Kings are going to be looking at that. And if he can at least maintain this team is still primed and ready. They have the experience. They have the offense. They've got the depth. They have the defense. If he continue his run, this team could certainly be looking at going back to, the promised land in the Frozen Four, this time in Boston, and hopefully maybe raising the first ever banner in school history.
Yeah, trying to seal the deal in the 93rd season of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey. Nick, I want to talk about a couple players. I want to talk about a pair of defensemen, and I also want to talk about a forward and a guy that I think is really coming to his own on the forward side. Let's start there. And, a pretty good penalty killer and starting to generate a little bit in terms of his responsibility at both ends of the ice. And you should hope so. He's a speedster and a guy by the name of Micah Miller, also another player with a high plus-minus rating this season. He's a guy that has started to be trusted on the penalty kill unit. There's no doubt about that with his speed and his ability. We've talked so much about his toolkit and his ability to kind of put all the pieces together. How close is he to becoming that complete 200-foot player? Obviously, I would say no player's perfect. They're not satisfied. What has this year been for Micah Miller in his senior year? Have you seen a little bit of growth, or what have you not liked from him?
When you talk about players, or I suppose anybody in life, right, when just that spark happens, right, where it's just something clicks, you kind of see that from Micah this year. But I think what he's done is really embrace the defensive side and how that really sort of opens up opportunities offensively for him too. Now, granted, he's been kind of a special team specialist, especially in the penalty kill too. We mentioned he hasn't gotten many opportunities as far as the power play is concerned, but on even strength, right, he's a guy that he's always on the right side of the puck. He plays, like I said, a little bit of that grit, that sandpaper. Finesse, he's got tools to it. I think that if there's anything that's maybe, we're to put his tools in, kind of a percentage or a pie chart, that finish to his game is still probably the one that is ranked some of the lowest, but it's starting to climb a little bit. And I think for him, it starts with the speed. Again, going back to his freshman year, for those who've watched this Husky squad for a bit, one of the big things that shocked me was there was a loose puck, I believe it was a shorthanded goal, and he just completely blew by Scott Perunovich there against UMD, and it was just one of those eye-popping moments, like, holy cow, this kid can skate, and then he went and beat Hunter Shepard, I believe it was between the legs on a shorthanded goal.
Ooh.
Yes. Yeah, who, right? For a former Hobie Baker winner. Yeah, my goodness gracious. So he's got it. And I think a lot of it's just you got to trust to know that, the defense creates the offense. And again, the offense, it's that revolving recycled circle. And for him, taking care of his own end has been really good so far this year. And I think the goals on the offense will come a little bit more, but you're starting to see a little bit more consistently that 100%. On both ends of the ice for him. And it's really going to benefit this team, especially down the stretch and hopefully in the playoffs as well.
Yeah, 8 points on the season for him. Just pushing right under that group of 10-point players that we had mentioned earlier. And best of luck, of course, to him in the second half. Speaking of the second half, how about the back half and the back end, if you will, in this Huskies hockey squad and some of the younger bodies that have gone there? First, I think we should comment very briefly on Jack Pierre. The season that he's had a little bit of injury bug there, but came back and has looked true to form. And another guy that I want to talk about too, Josh Lidke. And how hard that he has worked and continued to kind of grow and develop. If Mason Salquist is the bulldog on the front end, well, he's the hound dog on the back end, if you will, with his work ethic. What have you liked from those two guys? And is Jack Pierre deserving of his World Junior Championship call?
You first of all, you don't get a call if you don't deserve it. We'll put it to you that way. He absolutely deserves it. And the coaches, I think, will break down a little bit more in specifics, and so I won't spoil too much of that interview. But no question, Jack Pierre deserves to be where he's at. It was kind of surprising that he wasn't initially brought on, but things eventually worked out for him. So I'm happy for him there.
Did you hear that he was Mr. Hockey?
Never heard of that. Just kidding. Yeah, he's a solid player. And again, true freshman, 18 years of age, and he's a very mature kid for some of his age. I think that's what really separates him from a lot of maybe other kids his age, is that he's just very grounded, very down to earth. Understands what it is to like to be a Division I athlete and what it takes to be there and to sustain there. So he's absolutely deserving of having that call, and we wish him the best of luck up there. And I believe it's a Calgary or is it Edmonton that are hosting the World Juniors. It's one of those two cities. Either way.
I feel like it's Edmonton, but I'm probably wrong. So
somewhere in Canada. How about that? We're saying
Alberta.
So Alberta. Yeah, there you go. But at the end of it, no, more than deserving. And I think he's going to have an awesome impact on Team USA as they try to, again, go for gold up there against which probably will be Canada and some of the other programs that stand in their way. But Josh Lidke, a guy that came in, Luke Jaycox was the defenseman that kind of had that 6th/7th rotating defensive spot. And Josh Lidke sort of outworked him. And again, he's a player that the coaches will talk about a little bit later, so I won't steal too much, but he's kind of taking that position away from Luke Jaycox. I think there's a little bit more offensive upside to Josh Lidke. I think he's got a little bit better speed. Defensively, still's got some things to clean up, but overall, he stays with the play. He keeps players on the outside. He's really good with his feet exiting the zone. Just maybe that first pass, maybe a little bit of overreading. Again, that's maybe more of just freshman nerves about just not, making that first pass incorrect and just try not to create a turnover in the wrong areas of the ice. But overall, growth of him has been very, very good. And I'll have to see how much he continues to step up here in the second half of the season.
Yeah, Brendan Bushy kind of ended up in that same spot as Luke Jaycox too. And part of the reason that is the guy that has slowly and quietly gotten better in a Huskies uniform, Andre Treyball, by the way, too. I got a chance to check him out when he was with the Minnesota Wilderness back in the Null a couple years ago, actually teammates with Ryan Fanti, who of course is net mining for Minnesota Duluth. And his offensive upside is great, but I think where his defensive game has really flourished and he's become a really good puck moving defenseman that has been solid on both ends of the ice. And there's another guy that I've been impressed to as well. Nick, I got one final question for you. So let's take a look, of course, at the schedule for the Huskies here. And like we mentioned, Bemidji State, December 30th, January 1st, and then home and home. And then it's Minnesota Duluth, same as the women's hockey team, 7th and 8th at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center in January. And then the routine trip to Denver, Colorado, a series that has predominantly not been so kind to the Huskies, January 14th and 15th. We'll see if they can change that trend around before coming home to face Miami, January 21st and 22nd. And then some team in Grand Forks, Ralph Engelstad Arena in the wasteland, as Nick would say, January 28th and 29th. The North Dakota Effin' Hawks get the call and host the St. Cloud State Huskies February 4th and 5th. The following weekend, Western Michigan comes to town. The Huskies looking for a little bit of revenge there before a week off in the middle of February, and then traveling down to the Omahomies, Nebraska, Omaha, 18th and 19th of February. Only a couple more weekends, 4 more games in the docket, February 25th and 26th. Colorado College will come to town, and what is actually a later matchup between the two clubs comparatively to when CC usually ends up at Herbrooks National Hockey Center. And they've usually given the Huskies a pretty good run for their money in the fall. We'll have to see their performance in the spring, of course, as well. The Tigers will be bookended by the usual trip up to Amsoil Arena March 4th and 5th. Minnesota Duluth, the Bulldogs hosting the Huskies. March 11th, NCHC quarterfinals. March 18th, NCHC Frozen Faceoff. 25th and April 7th, the regionals and NCAA Frozen Four appearances. Nick, as we move into the second half, what do the Huskies got to do to find those all-important handful of wins to vault themselves into a top 3, top 2, even top spot in the NCHC and punch their ticket very well into the quarterfinals, the Frozen Faceoff, and the regional tournament of the NCAAs?
Well, we talked about this all the time, Noah, so it's going to be kind of a cliched answer, but every game's important in this league, right? I mean, if you look at Miami, their record wouldn't say it, but they're still a tough out. Again, we played North Dakota well game that split. It was a team that the Huskies, we talked about, was maybe running a little bit of an internal illness when they were facing the Fighting Hawks. So that second half, the second half of that series, you could tell that the gasoline tank wasn't as full as it probably would have been, and probably had too much fun on Friday. We'll put it that way. At the end of it. Well, at the end of it, too, it's one game at a time. It just has to be done that way. I mean, this is not going to be an easy road. Again, Huskies, one of the toughest schedules when it was released back in the late summer, early fall. It's good that this team is going to be battle tested, but again, you have to find some consistency. It's going to have to come with the 5-on-5 plays I mentioned before. It's going to have to come with reducing their penalty minutes and giving their penalty kill a lot less opportunities, and just really forcing the opposing teams to earn every inch of ice and earning every goal. And again, when you give them a man advantage on the power play, despite having a penalty kill that's just a shade of close to 85%. That's just one too many freebies. That's playing with way too many fires. And again, as teams get better, including the Huskies team, that means their specialty teams are the ones that also get better as well. So you can't give them, those free looks. And I think, again, that's the one anchor you can lift, and probably easily too. I think there's a lot of those penalties that have been given have been sort of those careless stick kind of infraction penalties that probably didn't need to happen. So it's an easy disciplinary fix. And I know that the coaching staff will probably talk to the team about that. And again, if you can find a little bit of that consistency, especially towards the end of February and into March, the NCHC tournament, that's going to bode well. Because again, there's these top 6 teams in this league. They've been at least at one time ranked all in the top 20. Western Michigan now in the top 3. So that's not going to be an easy battle, but one game at a time, and just have to, grind it out one shift as well.
Yeah, Western Michigan's got a tough gauntlet as well, too, as do most of the teams in the NCHC. It's going to be a real dogfight for home ice this season. And like you mentioned, taking care of some offensive zone penalties, not taking those, and then a little bit more 5-on-5 play, even if they can find a little bit more production or just be a little bit more consistent in that piece as well, too. And I think the Huskies will be just fine, because when their transitional speed is rolling, a la against North Dakota Friday night on December 3rd, impressive to watch in this Huskies team, looking for that veteran experience to carry them through in all of those aspects. Speaking of veteran experience, Nick, your veteranness was joined by more veteranness, and that would be Brett Larson, Dave Shyiak, and the wealth of intelligence at the Division I level in this interview. Nick, what did you like from this interview? Was there anything that fans should be looking forward to here?
We put the two coaches up against each other, and I'll just tease it with that. It was quite entertaining.
I still can't believe you actually trusted me to put together a segment like that. I mean,
what am I supposed to do? Say no?
Well, you had a chance to proofread the questions. Like I said, you were the auditor at this point. Yeah, and
I've never been an auditor of this. What are you talking about? Never.
And you didn't say anything to me, so I figured that the questions were just so bad that you were like, "Well, we'll watch this crash and burn." But nonetheless, we'll leave it to the viewer and the listener to decide what sort of a fire they thought this would be. I thought it was pretty fire myself, but we won't keep you waiting. Episode number 92 is Healthy Scratch interview segment for our Christmas special. Brett Larson and Dave Shyiak.
Welcome to the Huskies Warmer Notes podcast, episode number 92, here along with Noah Grant. I'm Nick Maxon, and today for a holiday special, we're bringing in coaches from the St. Cloud State men's hockey team. Of course, we have head coach Brett Larson, assistant coach Dave Shyiak, both of you joining us here, recording early. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us here on the podcast.
Thanks for having us on.
It's awesome. Thanks for having us.
Been a pretty good start to the season, halfway through. Probably a good needed break, though, wouldn't you say there, head coach Brett?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of teams are probably feeling the same way. It's been a strange first half in some ways. It's funny, we battled COVID and went through all the protocols last year and whatnot. This year it's been the flu. A lot of teams, including us, got hit hard with it towards the end of the first half. And boy, I don't know if I'd ever seen our team is sick. And I know I was hearing some of the things from the other teams as well. So as much as you'd love to keep playing, I think the break came at a good time this year.
And part of that, going back to my nursing background, just happens to be, so many people were wearing masks at this time last year. So, of course, now you have the opportunity for that flu virus to, kind of transition. But nonetheless, Dave, I kind of wanted to pose a similar question to you. You play North Dakota the first week of December, and now you've got that time off until Bemidji. What is the process like for, making sure you guys stay fresh as coaches? Obviously, you're probably doing a little bit of recruiting. How do you get the players to kind of stay fresh to make sure that when you guys are back in action at the end of December, you guys are ready to go?
Yeah, great question. No, we had a plan in place for the guys after the North Dakota series. We wanted to keep them energized. We wanted to keep them as best condition as possible. So we built up a small games tournament throughout the week. So we kept score every single day. Then there was winners announced at the end. We changed up teams Monday through Friday, and the guys were invigorated. It created good energy. You put something on the line, for example, food, stuff like that, or who cleans up the locker room to help out Minx at the end. And it was good. The guys had good practices. The games were highly contested. Leading up into the weekend, we thought as coaches, it went very, very well. Kept the energy high, kept the pace pretty high. And then during exam week, we had our strength coach, Jake Franzik. He did an excellent job with them, just keeping them mentally sharp, but also obviously they got to have energy to finish their exams real strong. So that was about a week and a half. And then they got a good 8 to 10 days off, which like coach said, it's important that they get a chance to reset the button, go home, have good food with their family and friends, just relax, no hockey, no school, and then come back the night of the 26th and get ready for the Bemidji series. So our plan in place was good, and we thought our guys followed it to a T, and hopefully we're energized by the time we get back here next week.
Definitely going to get to some fan questions as well as a little trivia between the two coaches here just a bit, but a couple of just housekeeping questions for you guys. Let's start with one. I know with the rise in COVID or the NHL, I know some fans are wondering, and maybe had Coach Brett Larson, I'll let you comment on this one. Has there been any communication as far as from the NCAA or the NCHC as far as any changes currently to the COVID protocol?
Right now there hasn't, but as we all know, going through this pandemic, things can change on a day-to-day basis. But fortunately, at least from what we're hearing around the college hockey world and our own experience here, has been that up to this point, it hasn't hit us yet. Now, will that change? Maybe. But for the most part, I know the guys are doing everything they can, and they're trying to stay as safe as possible and doing everything they can to stay healthy. But at the moment, we haven't heard anything. And I guess right now we're hoping that we can dodge this thing. But like I said, it's, as we've seen in the past, things can change overnight. Obviously, some concerning trends with the NHL right now, as you mentioned. But as of right now, so far, we're kind of staying course.
Yep. And the second question, sorry, no one to cut you off there. Dave, I'll pose this one to you. I know that the fans have been missing forward number 19, Sam Henches. I know before the North Dakota series, you're still considered week to week. Is there any update on his health and his status at all heading into the second half of the season?
Yeah, he's had a long rehab. We think for the most part, he's going to be ready unless things change for the Bemidji series. So obviously he's followed it with Brian Domain, all the rehab and conditioning that he's had to do. He did have some light practices, non-contact 2 weeks prior to the break here. And we think he's going to be ready to go. And we'll certainly be happy to have him back in the lineup if he's ready to go 100% when we play Bemidji on the 30th.
Yeah, certainly excited, obviously, to get back in action and see some more Huskies hockey. Brett, I kind of wanted to ask you, go 6-2 to start off the season in your non-conference schedule, then 4-4 in NCHC play. It's been a real gauntlet, not only around the NCHC, but I would say the Big Ten this year as well, too. And of course, you got a handful of those teams you saw already this season: Minnesota, Wisconsin. How would you kind of summarize the first half for this team, and what is kind of the stepping stone into the second half?
Well, we obviously met before we left for Christmas, and as tough as the schedule was, and as tough as this league is night to night, you're just never quite satisfied. And I think that the team feels that way. I think the team understands and is humble enough to realize we have to keep getting better. Everyone else in the league is going to get better. It's the oldest college hockey's ever been. I would argue that maybe it's the best top to bottom college hockey's ever been. So, do we like the start? Yes. But are we satisfied? Definitely not. There were certainly a couple games where we thought we maybe through our own discipline or our own mistakes let a couple games get away that we'd like to have. And so I think that the message in the room was, let's really enjoy the break, take a deep breath, enjoy your families, enjoy Christmas, get away. But let's be humble enough to know that we're going to have to come back and work even harder to keep getting better, to keep up in this league, and hopefully have a chance to make a run. We saw a lot of good things in the first half, but we also saw some areas that we have to get better at. So I think it was promising. I think it was a good first half. But I think there's a big time understanding within the staff and in the room that we're going to need to constantly keep pushing to get better week to week to have a chance to make a good run again.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, the series against North Dakota, a very good series. You got what you expected, I would say, on Saturday night, the Friday night contest. You'll take that all night. Omaha series probably could have stolen. You had a good goaltender that maybe stole a game on Saturday. The one I want to go back to, and Dave, you used to coach not far from here and actually coaching there as well, too. What is it that Western Michigan has seemed to do so well lately in Kalamazoo against the Huskies?
Yeah, obviously they've been kind of a thorn in our side there a little bit, but obviously I think they got good players. They're well coached. Going into that building, I think there's a little bit of a stigma because it's a great college building, low ceiling. They got the Larson lunatics there that are right on top of you. It's an older building where they got odd bounces off the boards and glasses and stuff like that. So when they get rolling in there, it's a real tough arena to win in. And we went in there, you know what, guys, we played some great games. We can go back to last year. We didn't do so well on Friday. We came back, played very, very well on Saturday, and we did the same thing this year. We're happy with our effort as coaches, but not happy with the result. And you got to give credit to them. They got some good goaltending. Brandon Bussey on Saturday night. We thought we did everything we could. I think we outshot them. We outchanced them. We just didn't score when we needed to score, and you got to give credit to the other team. So they're a tough team, number one, guys. The building makes it a little bit more difficult, but you know what? It's a tough league as it is. And as Coach mentioned, there's probably 6 teams here that are going to be vying for home ice, and we're one of them. And so is Western Michigan. And you got to learn from those instances. You got to find a way to win, because if you can win in buildings like that, you can win in most buildings in the country. So we learned a little bit of a lesson about how we have to play effort-wise, and now we just got to get the results. And that's why, we're looking forward to the second half here to make a strong push to get to where we want to get to.
And one final question for me before we get into some of the fan questions, and I'll kick over to Noah to see if he's got one more. But Coach Larson, how awesome is it to see freshman Jack Pierre to be selected not only to the prelim, but also make the final roster for the USA for the World Junior Championship tournament?
Yeah, well, we're obviously all really proud of him around here, and I know his teammates are. I know the staff is. He's obviously been off to a good start for us, and what the fans see on the rink is pretty special. And I know they appreciate that, but I think what's even more important is he's just a really good kid. He's a good person. He's a great Husky, cares about this program, cares about his teammates. So with all that being said, he's a fun and easy guy to cheer for. And I know our guys are going to have the games on, and I know we will as well. And we're all really proud of him for, earning that spot. And that's what he did. He was injured, unfortunately, during a part of the selection process for USA Hockey, and missed some games for us. So he was a late add to that camp. And I think he went in there with a chip on his shoulder, wanting to prove people wrong that he shouldn't have been a late add. And I know he went in there and played his game, and he earned that. So like I said, he's just a he's a great part of this program. He's a huge part of that locker room in there. And I know the guys and the staff are really going to be cheering for him.
My final question, Nick, actually is on kind of a similar vein. This one's for Dave. Along with Jack, you never really know how freshmen are going to acclimate to the NCAA level. How have you thought about your freshmen and your transfers? Of course, Josh Litke, Mason Salquist, Ryan Roseborough, and then Aiden Spellacy moving over from Robert Morris.
Yeah, they all bring a certain element, and usually takes a little bit more time for a freshman to come in to make that transition, especially in the NCHC. And we'll start with Jack there first. Obviously, he's a tremendous talent and he's a true freshman. People got to realize he's only 18 years old. And he's always kind of had this air about him. He's confident in his abilities. He's smooth in how he plays the game. But there was some nerves early in the year. And I think throughout this year, we've expressed that a little bit on Friday nights. In some of those games against Mankato in Minnesota, he showed some of those young nerves, if you want to call it that. But he's such a confident kid and humble kid. The next night, after having just kind of an average, nervous Friday night's game, he was probably the best player in the ice both nights, or one of the best players on both teams of both nights. So it tells you a little bit about his maturity level, tells you a little bit about his talent level and the type of person and player he is. And I think after his injury, he started putting more back-to-back nights together. And I think that's what allowed him to get that invite to the World Junior Camp. And then with his ability and his I guess, new confidence in saying, hey, I can play at this level and be one of the better players. I think he demonstrated that I think guys only had a 2-day tryout and he was able to crack the lineup there. So obviously happy for him, but he's made the transition quite well. It took a little bit of time to get consistency, but we think he's there. He's still got obviously a ceiling to improve. Josh Lutke, another guy, came in, a tremendous person, tremendous teammate, works very hard on and off the ice, great student. And he just got better and better and better every single day. And it made it difficult for us to get a lineup because he pushed to become a regular in the lineup due to how hard he works and his habits he's created in practice. And then we got Aiden Spellacy's, I go back to Mason Salquist, played earlier, played some important minutes for us, made a fairly smooth transition early, probably the first 68 games, impacted a lot of the outcomes of the game, scored some big goals for us. And as any young player, there's going to be some ups and downs. I think the last 4 or 5 games, as the games got a little bit tougher, he was up and down in his play, but that's part of being a freshman in our league. Our expectations of him are very high, and another great teammate, another hard worker, another important piece of our success this year. And he continues to get better. Aiden Spellacy, a transfer, obviously a veteran in terms of what he brings to the locker room, just a great character person, unbelievable work ethic, competes hard, probably leads our team in impactful hits, is pretty good at the faceoff dot, does real good on our penalty kill. Another important piece of our success that he brings with his intangibles. And then Roseborough, obviously he hasn't gotten the lineup yet. We knew it was going to take some time for him, but he continues to work really hard off the ice, and he's very close to getting in the lineup. He thinks the game well, starting to make plays, starting to be confident in his play, is getting stronger in his edges, and it just adds to our depth. So real excited about those newcomers, and it does take some time to make this transition, but all in all, real happy with the success our freshmen's brought in, and also Aiden Spellacy's coming in as a transfer. So excited about what they can do for us in the second half here.
Yeah, we're excited as well too. Nick, I think this is the portion of the show. I'm thinking maybe we do a fan question, then we'll do a group of 3 questions on my side and kind of flip it back. So guys,
Sure.
Coaches, you guys don't know this quite yet, but Brett Larson has been subject to a little bit of our trivia in recent past. What we've got for you guys is we want to know how well you guys know each other. A little bit, not by much, just 3 questions for each of you guys on either side, and then a tiebreaker if necessary. We've got a coaching question, a player question, and a current question about the current St. Cloud State hockey team. So we'll see how you guys are doing before that. So I think Nick will throw some fan questions in the middle of that. Nick, if you want to throw your first one out there.
Sure. So the first fan question we received was here for you, head coach Brett Larson. And the question was, when Mike Gibbons announced he was departing, what about Dave Shyiak, attracted you to bring him onto the squad? And, was that transition from one program to another seamless, or was there, a little bit of a learning curve for the coaching staff?
Well,
yeah,
put me on the spot, but it's pretty easy because there were two things that I personally knew that I needed as a younger, and I won't say younger, I'm not that young anymore, but a newer head coach, I guess. I wanted somebody that was a proven recruiter, number one, because let's face it, the better players you have and better people you have around you, the more successful you're going to be. And obviously look at the results of Western Michigan right now. I mean, Dave had a huge part of building that program and that team, and look how they're doing. That says a lot right there. And then I wanted to keep learning as a coach, and Dave's time as a head coach at the Division I level at Alaska Anchorage for, I believe, 7 years was something where I thought I would have a guy here that I could keep learning from, that could help me grow, that knew what it was like to sit in the chair, that I could lean on to help keep improving. And those two things for me, I thought made him a perfect fit for the job.
Yeah, Dave, curious real quick before I ask the questions to Brett. Brett, I would hope would get the first question, judging by his answer here. But Dave, how was the transition for you on the other side, coming in as the quote unquote new guy, so to speak?
You know what? I think as hockey coaches, it's when you move from site to site, I guess, or organization. I think it's a small world. It's easiest for coaches because obviously we've got a past relationship, myself and Brett. I'm getting to know Ollie. I knew Gibby really well because he recruited me. And that part was the easy part, guys. And it's funny. A lot of the questions I'm getting around the rinks locally, because I got kids in high school, is how has it been for the family? And it was probably more difficult for the family guys because we did move during the pandemic. And so I got 3 kids. And none of them were in school because everything was online. So they were unable to meet new kids. For the most part, their activities were canceled. The boys got hockey. My daughters got volleyball. So there wasn't a whole lot of that. So it was tougher for the family to make the transition initially. And then I think once the pandemic is settled down and they got back into school and started meeting new people, they've done a complete circle, and the transition is like we've never left. My daughter's got a circle of friends. My boys got friends. We've intertwined with the neighborhood and community. So it's been really good. This last probably year has been good, but it was difficult at first. For me, I think the hockey part was easy. It was just new. There was a newness to it. There was a fresh start. Obviously, great facilities here, winning environment. Coach Larson, Coach Oliver did a great job with the culture here, and it was just real nice to be part of that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of players and coaches historically say that when they move to a new place, sometimes the hockey part is the home away from home for a little bit till you kind of find your footing in the community. But we're going to throw it over here to the first group of 3 questions. Brett Larson, you're going to be answering the 3 questions. These are questions about Dave Shyiak here. So we'll start with the coaching question.
Oh, put me on the spot now.
Yeah, should be good. Coaching question number 1. Where has Dave Shyiak coached for the most seasons in college hockey? Has it been Alaska Anchorage, St. Cloud State, Western Michigan, or Northern Michigan?
The most season. I don't know. I really don't know. I'll guess Anchorage.
It's actually Northern Michigan, 10 seasons, 1995 to 2005.
7? Was it 7 at Anchorage and 8? Okay. 8
at Anchorage, and then 6 at Western Michigan, and then of course 1.5 at St. Cloud. I'm glad you didn't pick St. Cloud.
I knew it wasn't St. Cloud.
Well, we'll move on to question number 2 and see what the answer is to. This is a question about Dave Shyiak's playing days. During his playing career for Northern Michigan and Murrayfield, what position is Dave listed as playing? Is he right wing, defense, center, or left wing?
Right wing.
He is right wing. Congratulations. Got that one.
1 for 2.
All right. Final. Yeah. Well, these questions went through a rigorous polling and response process before they got here, Brett. So final question. This one's about the current St. Cloud State team. Which player on the current team has the most penalty minutes for St. Cloud this season? Is it Seamus Donahue, Yami Krannila, Jack Pierre, or Easton Brodzinski?
I'm going to go with Brodsky.
It is Brodzinski, 32 penalty minutes on the year. Yami Krannila with 28. Jack Peart and Seamus Donahue both have 18. So 2 for 3. Not too bad, Brett. Not too bad.
He's going to turn that around in the second half, though. I can tell you that right now.
I figured that'd be a question where you're like, yeah, that's not the greatest stat. But anyway.
Okay, so we'll ask this second fan question, and I'll throw this over to you, Dave. This has to do with Kevin Fitzgerald. Do you think that Kevin Fitzgerald, with the way he's played in this extra year, do you think he'll be playing beyond St. Cloud, or do you think that his future is more in accounting, where he majored at St. Cloud State?
You know what? That's a great question. The year he's having right now, I think if you talk to Fitzy itself, and I think there's always the inkling, if you can be a professional hockey player and get paid for doing something you love, that you'll take that opportunity. And if he continues to play like this and has a strong second half and he's attracting interest at a higher level, and if someone presents him a good contract, you can only play hockey so long. And Fitzy's just a lovable guy. He's passionate. Teammates love him. We love him. As a staff, he's everything you want. He works hard and on and off the ice. He's a great student. You can always do accounting, but you can't always be a professional hockey player. So I think if you ask Fitzy right now, at the end of the year, if someone's going to put a contract in front of him and you want to play professional hockey for a living for a little while, I think he'll take that opportunity.
Yeah, and he's a guy that, like you mentioned, extremely lovable. Brett, before we get to Dave's slew of questions, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you that Kevin Fitzgerald decided to come back after, about halfway through the season last year? He was like, nope, I'm going to be an accountant.
Well, with Fitzy, it changed by the day, to be honest, at the end of the season. One day he'd come in, say he's coming back. The next day he's coming in and say he's leaving. So I can't say I was surprised. I think the biggest thing for him is he loves the guys that he's in the room with. And I think spending another year with those guys won out. And it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to be a part of a group like this for him. And he didn't want to let that pass. And I can tell you this, you ask him now, though, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy he is that he came back, he'll give you a 10. He said he's having the time of his life. And I think it's really a good lesson for a lot of hockey players in general. I think Fitzy has just found that sweet spot of coming to compete, being who he is, and enjoying it and having fun playing hockey. And I think there's always that sweet spot where if you can get into as a player, that's when you're the most successful. And it's really fun to see Kevin get there.
Yeah, and it doesn't help. He's having a pretty good season too, statistically as well, and a nice boost for your guys' group. Dave, it's your turn for some Brett Larson questions here. We're going to start with a coaching question here. Brett Larson coached 6 combined seasons at Duluth and is in his 4th season at St. Cloud. But from 2011 to 2013, he coached 2 seasons and was the general manager for which USHL team? Is it the Green Bay Gamblers, the Waterloo Blackhawks, the Sioux City Musketeers, or the Fargo Force?
Sioux City.
Okay.
Cheers. 1 for 1.
Not even a hesitation.
That was easy.
That was smooth. All right. Player question. After being selected 213th overall by the Detroit Red Wings, when was the last season that Brett had the skates on competitively? 1996-97, 99-2000, 03-04, or 06-07?
Holy smokes, guys. That one's a tough one. Can you give me a hint? What team was it? Was it Europe or was it over here?
It was the Florida Seals in the SPHL, 6 games.
Florida Seals?
Yeah. You were looking.
By the way,
I'll go with your I'll go with what was the first choice, the very last season. Was it 96, you said?
Yeah, 96-97 was the first choice. Yeah.
I'll go with that first choice.
It's actually the last one, 06-07.
Okay.
The Florida Seals, Brett Larson had a playing career for 11 different teams after Duluth. Brett, you said only 6 games. Is that because you were a grocery shopping stalker, or what was that here?
You know what's funny is I took a sales job. We had bought a house in Florida after I got done playing in Europe. We were going to try living down there. I took a sales job, and that team was in town, and they had a bunch of guys hurt, and they asked if I could come out and fill in. I didn't even practice. I just play a game here and there. And my last game, I'll never forget it. We for whatever reason, I only had white jerseys. I don't know if the other ones were in getting lettered. The other team packed their wrong jerseys, so both teams wore white jerseys. And I made a pass in a D-to-D play and just got smoked. Got up, couldn't even move. I said, enough of this. That's it. I'm just going to go back to the office and call it a day. So
my question for you, Brett, and this might be a little bit too forward, so feel free to get mad at me. Did you still have hair when you got hit?
No, that was long gone by that point. But it was interesting because I actually, my last real year of playing was in Basingstoke, England, the year before that. And I was having a lot of neck problems, and I'd get hit. My right arm would go completely numb. And that happened in that game. And I remember thinking, hey, this isn't worth the $200 a game these guys are giving me to come out. So that was it for my very, very below average pro hockey career.
Yeah, spent quite a bit of time, I believe, in Denmark, I think, for a couple of seasons too. And that's not a bad place, I would say, to play some hockey. But nonetheless, speaking of hockey, Dave, your third question, current St. Cloud State question. Kevin Fitzgerald leading the team with a +11 rating on the season. There's only one other player who can match that plus minus for the season. Who is it? Is it Kyler Kupka, Micah Miller, Spencer Meyer, or Andre Treyball?
Oh, I should know this one. I'm going to go with Micah Miller.
It is Micah Miller. Congratulations. Micah Miller +11 on the season. Kyler Kupka +7. Andre Treyball's at +6 and Spencer Myers at +2. So Nick, I know you got another question here, so go for that. I think I also have a tie-breaking question since the boys were so good at the trivia piece here. So go ahead, Nick.
Sure. We'll start with you, Coach Brett Larson, then I'll actually get Dave's input too. But the last fan question we have is, what are some of the cities or maybe programs that are recruiting hotspots, or they want to know what are some must stops in your recruiting tour throughout the state of Minnesota?
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, first off, I was going to say, St. Cloud's always been built first and foremost on Minnesota kids, local talent, guys from all over the state, to be honest. It's funny because you do have some different pipelines, right? And St. Cloud's done good with local kids around here. That Minnetonka pipeline for us with Andrew Prochnow and Jimmy Schultz, Joe Molinar, Josh Lidkey, that's been a pretty nice one for the Huskies over the years, and probably missing some guys even. But to be honest, it's all over the state, and Minnesota kids have been a huge part of this program. But you know what, St. Cloud, it's funny because a lot of the things that they did in the past, they've been successful, and we certainly wanted to keep going as well. They've always had a nice pipeline from Finland. Nick Oliver just got back from a 10-day trip over there. Western Canada's been good to the Huskies, and we've got a couple really nice Alberta players right now, and obviously Dave's contacts in Manitoba. And so we've tended to be Minnesota, obviously the USHL North American League, Western Canada, and Finland have kind of been the spots for the Huskies.
And Dave, I don't know if you wanted to build off that. I suppose, you being the recruiting master, is there any, any connections or pipelines that you like to tap into more than the others?
Well, first of all, I'm not a master. Recruiting's not a master. It's a group effort. And no, just I guess piggyback off what Coach said is our primary recruiting is in this area. And I'm just starting to get to know this area in terms of the high school hockey around here. There's an abundance of players. There's over 200 high schools in the state, and it's just a matter of filtering through that. And we've had a lot of good success, and our history's been built upon those type of players in this area here. USHL is obviously, I think, the best junior A league in North America, and then obviously the North American League, then Western Canada. So, and then Europe as well. Obviously, we've got a good pipeline, not just from Finland. We got, obviously guys from Czech Republic, Andres from there, our goaltenders from Slovakia. In Sweden, obviously, we're tapping into that market as well. There's been an influx of Europeans probably the last 10 years that want to use NCAA as an option. So we certainly want to take advantage of that. And then obviously, I think the guys in Western Canada, where I'm from, they're getting more attuned to NCAA hockey and not going the major junior route. They're becoming a little bit more informed and education. More educational on our side. It was what we bring in terms of, hey, if you want to play in the NHL, this is still a good option for guys to move on to the next level. 35% of the NHL's NCAA guys. So I would say those markets that we just mentioned are primarily the ones that we're looking at. But we always want to find the best available talent, and it's our job to find them, obviously.
Well, until you have a Mike Gibbons driving past a couple of moose in Finland story, we'll see. We'll see when you're fully qualified to be St. Cloud assistant coach. But of course, I know a lot of friends say that part of recruiting sometimes the best you can do, just keep watching players and see if you can kind of pick out that little detail or that little skill that you can develop. Guys, I've only got the tie-breaking question, then one more question for each of you, and it's the same question. So thank you again so much for joining us early on this Tuesday morning. The tie-breaking question, I guess I'm going to kind of say, whoever can say it first, it's a fill in the blank question. So best of luck, guys. Whoever can get it first here. Question is, Nick Oliver, 4th round, 2009 selection, 110th overall. Which NHL team drafted him?
Oh, he got it.
Yeah. It is.
Wow.
Dave, the better question is, did you know the answer? Or
I did, but I was a little bit slow on that. Larson's quicker. His coffee's better than mine.
That is correct. Nashville Predators. I'm glad you guys both got it. You guys both did fantastic in trivia. My final question for you guys involves the holidays. Dave, I'm going to start with you. I know you guys probably been on the road doing some recruiting. Other than that, any big plans for the holiday? Anything special going on?
No, we're staying here. Just happy to stay here. Obviously, my family's back in Canada, and with the unknown right now, traveling border to border, we're staying put. My wife's family's from Brazil. It'd be great to go to Brazil and experience that heat, but we usually just stick around here. We get on the ponds and have a bunch of get-togethers on the ponds with the fire and with the neighbors and kids and whatnot. So we'll stick around here, relax a little bit, and just enjoy it with each other.
You still have some get up and go, Dave, on the pond? What's the story?
I do. The boys still can't beat me yet, but they're getting close.
Yeah, well,
guys, Sticker plays with our guys after practice most days. There's a heated 3-on-3 game. Him and Ollie and a few of the other guys. It's pretty regular, and he'll come in and he's full body sweat. And he usually cross-checked a guy or two in the battle, and they got after it. And you know what? The guys absolutely love it. I think it's a really fun part of the culture that Nick and Schick still get out there and play with those guys and get after it. But he's ready for the pond games. I know that.
Yeah. I got some help with some young legs with Nick Oliver and some of our other players out there. So, but it's a lot of fun, guys. It's a lot of fun. It's good exercise. So we'll enjoy it as a family together and have a good Christmas, and then back at it on the 26th.
All right. Well, of course, Dave, we wish you the best. If we could ship you anything, we'd give you a 1995 Madison Monsters Brett Larson card and a puck signed by Mike Gibbons that says "Good luck, see you never." There actually is a 1995 Madison Monsters Brett Larson card out on social media. If you get a chance to check out SCSU Hockey Cards on Twitter, it is there, and the hair looks good, Brett. I'll give you that. Brett, how's the Christmas been, and what are you going to be up to the next couple of days?
Yeah, I'll take the next few days off as well. It's been nice. We have got some recruiting done. As Dave mentioned earlier, we really enjoyed actually the break practices and the small area game tournament we did, and I think the guys enjoyed it as well. It was fun for the coaches. The one thing that our guys will tell you though is they're never happy with the reffing, which is us. And there's a lot of controversy, a lot of apparently missed calls that they believe, and a lot of guys not happy with our job as officials. But with that being said, we had a lot of fun with it. It was a really enjoyable time. Actually, I know the guys now are really enjoying some time with their family, and we'll do the same. My wife and I are obviously both from up north there, and we'll head back for a day, spend some time with the family. But then we like to get the kids back. My daughter's still young. We get her to bed on Christmas Eve and wake up for Santa on Christmas morning. So looking forward to just a couple of days off here. And like Dave said earlier, we'll be back on the night of the 26th for our first skate.
Well, you should like your Christmas present. Of course, you're going to get a collection of Dave Shyiak expressions. There's a couple of good ones on the internet of him staring down officials with a camera. So you're going to get a collection of those and the 1991 NMU National Championship complete box set collection. So
sounds good.
Nick, you got anything else for the boys here?
Not at all. Gentlemen, thank you so very much again for joining us. Have a happy and safe holiday season. Definitely good luck in the second half, and we'll be catching up with you guys before Mitchie here probably a little bit next week. So again, happy holidays, and we'll see you guys again.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us, guys. Have a great Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And a happy New Year.
Merry Christmas to you guys as well. Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
And Once again, Nick, what a blast to have Brett and Dave. And in fact, if anyone gets a chance to check out SCSU hockey cards, those pinstripe, whatever mighty smorgasbord jerseys that Brett was talking about, he actually mentioned to us after the show about how one of the incentives to win a hockey game, the coach said, you guys get to keep your jerseys at the end of the year. And Brett was like, it's not much of an incentive. They're not that
It was
great.
a bonus. Yeah, I guess the owner was kind of a frugal type, as many of them seem to be. Just ask the Omaha Lancers. Anyways, I settled jab. But seriously, that I guess he came in with a serious face, and he was like, at the end of the year, if you guys, I think it was a playoff series, if I remember correctly, Noah, that if you won the series, you'll let you keep the jersey at the end of the year. It's like, well, that's not an incentive. But as you mentioned too, and if you haven't got a chance to check out the actual jersey, you should, because it looks like Yankees pinstripes, Mighty Duck colors. It was very 90s. It was very 90s. And even for 90s gear, the pinstripes, that was not a good look. So
have you ever seen the styrofoam coffee cups where it's like they've got the little weird, the purple and teal zigzags on the styrofoam cups? Imagine that, but like as a jersey, and there's your answer.
And having pinstripes run down it. Yeah. It's just not good. So
not good. The New York Yankees meet Barney. But anyway, speaking of things that are comical like Barney, we're going to head on over to our extra ice session here to close out the show, Nick, and we're going to talk about our 3 wishes for the game of hockey in the second half of the respective seasons. And welcome in the extra ice segment here on our Christmas special. Nick Maxon to my left if you're watching the YouTube, or maybe he's on your right if you're listening to audio, or maybe he's on both sides. I have no idea, but we're happy to be here.
That'd be scary as hell.
Hey, for somebody out there, it could be a dream day. I have no idea, but nonetheless, whatever. Noah Grant.
Nope.
happy to be here on our Christmas special, and what a special day it is. We're going to talk about our wish list. We're going to Scrooge the heck out of this, if you will, and talking about our 3 wishes for the game of hockey. And Nick, why don't we start with you? And why don't we just kind of alternate one wish at a time related to St. Cloud State women's hockey, St. Cloud men's hockey, Minnesota Wild, NHL, even high school hockey, whatever you want to talk about. What is your first wish for the game of hockey as we move into January?
This actually covers all of them. But I just wish that there aren't a lot more shutdowns. And, I hate the fact that it's end of 2021 and we're starting to have concerns that maybe this might happen again. If there's one thing that, we touched a little bit with the 2 coaches, they haven't had any direct communication from either the NCAA or the NCHC or the schools for that matter. But it wouldn't surprise me if there was not some type of communication, Noah, and that's just not college hockey, but high school hockey, youth hockey, again, professional hockey, again, as we mentioned before, NHLers opting out of participation in the Beijing Olympics. A lot of that just due to if you get, a positive test in a foreign country, you're spending a lot more time than you probably would like to there, upwards of 45 days, I think, is the max. I think it's somewhere between 21 and 45 days, and just not a good situation overall. So, you just hope that, these variants, whatever it's, Omicron or Delta, whatever new variant's going to come along. This thing has been wreaking havoc on our world for almost 2 years now. And in fact, it was right around 2 years to the date that, this thing first started to rear its ugly head. And it's made such an impact on us as a society, and, for the game of hockey, especially, the lower tiers of hockey that just financially just can't really recover very well from these types of absences of influx of cash and whatnot. You just hope that we don't get into a situation where, we're going to look at other shutdowns. I mean, even just the testing stuff, that stuff's expensive. That's not free. That's, what people have to understand is, these institutions, whether it's schools or, for conferences, they put up a lot of monies to have these athletes, go in and to play the game. And, that cost is all shared by the schools. And, if we had to do that, it's fine. But if we're looking at, postponements and shutdowns, again, the NHL basically said, screw it with this week. They said, we're done with this, to try to see if we can't just get this to pass by. But I just kind of hope it doesn't get worse, because if it does, we could be looking at severe implications for not only the game of hockey, but other sports in general. So I just hope that we don't end up in that situation again, because I think there could be a lot more long-standing ramifications to the leagues financially if that happens again.
Yeah, especially when you don't have a chance to plan for it like we did with the NCHC pod. And it's kind of in that weird period like it was back in 2020. Then a weird phrase, by the way, back in 2020. Anyway, speaking of things that have stood the test of time, my first wish here, Nick, and it's largely on the men's hockey side for St. Cloud State, and it's a wish that it's a big ask. I wish that people in social media would just chillax every time the Huskies don't do something absolutely perfect, man. I know we've talked about this so many times, but
wait, human beings aren't perfect in a way.
Yeah. There's so much ebb and flow that goes into a hockey shift, a hockey game, a hockey period, a hockey season, a weekend series. Are there concerning trends that the Huskies need to clean up? I think there are every season. We saw the same thing again. How many times we referenced the game when they get their doors blown off at Amsoil Arena the second to last week of the regular season. There will always be those things, and they'll always be at different times. Things that need to change in the regional tournament, things that need to change in the NCHC Frozen Faceoff. That's part of the game, and part of it sometimes is we just got to sit back and enjoy the ride. And not that you can't be a casual fan or an armchair GM, so to speak, and have your opinion and have your take. But sometimes it's like, we'll dissect it for you. We'll dissect the good and the bad, absolutely. As well as more educated hockey pundits that are not us will do. But sometimes you just got to sit back and appreciate it. And at the end of the day, be thankful that St. Cloud, they have a good hockey team and one of the best, if not the best colleges in college hockey, or conferences in college hockey, I should say. So there's a lot of things to look forward to with St. Cloud hockey. And I mean, the stuff that's directed at like officiating or things like that, that's a little different. And I don't care so much about that for the most part. But I mean, the things that people are freaking out about sometimes are usually not that bad, or usually quick fixes or things that the coaching staff will address. Because trust me, if you see it, I guarantee you, Nick Oliver, Dave Shyiak, Brett Larson, and the rest of the coaching staff and crew, and even the team, they see it too. And they'll go through it, and they're doing their best to try to change things as well too. So relax on Twitter. Let's all be friends. Let's all be Caleb Peabodys, man, and have a little bit of fun and enjoy ourselves while we do that. Nick, number 2 on your list, what's in your wish list goodie bag?
I wish that we could sprinkle some magic dust or magic glitter or whatever the heck it is that people do, wave a wand at this women's hockey team. Yeah. Honestly, there's a lot of really, especially off the ice, there's a lot of really great people in that organization. I think, we spend a lot of time dissecting the on-ice product, and that's what we're here for, right? But at the end of the day, these are great people outside the rink. That really care about the game of hockey. They really want to win. They really want to succeed. And you do wish that whatever has to be done, we talked about it earlier, but I just wish that there was just some way that they could just put it together. It's like looking at, this is probably the most terrible reference in the world, but, getting, those little like connect the dot things when you're a kid, right? Yeah. Where you can kind of see the picture, right? And you can kind of, before you put, a coloring pencil or a crayon to paper, right? You can kind of see what this is. And then it seems like the little kid comes across the table and brings his crayon over and starts drawing all over top of it for this women's team. Right. And so my point is, again, I'm not trying to compare, them to the coloring book. What I'm saying is that you can see there's pieces in place. You can see what they're trying to do, right? And it just haven't been able to just connect all the dots together to make the image all one consistent team effort every single night. Because really to me, it's frustrating for us as fans, and and for people who know some of the players and as well as the coaching staff well, to see some of these results that keep happening. I can only imagine how they feel, the frustration, the emotions get to them. There's no question about that, but you just kind of hope that, it's almost like you wish for amnesia. It's almost like you wish for someone just to kind of, whatever it is, you want to smack them in the head, because I don't want Twitter to blow off on that. I'm advocating for, shots in the head, because God forbid that would happen. But whether you have that short-term memory loss, or whether it's a win or a loss, you just forget about it and you can just focus on what's next. And, you know, when you get to the midway point of the season, one of the concerns that I think everybody has is everybody knows what their record is. Everybody knows where their strengths have been. Everybody knows where their weaknesses have been. Their weaknesses certainly outweigh their strengths right now. It's easy to kind of have this mentality of throwing the towel on the back end, just sort of like, you know, letting it ride the rest of the season. I don't wish that upon this team. Again, I really certainly hope that the coaching staff between Steve, Molly, and Janelle can keep this team motivated to know that, okay, maybe, yeah, we're maybe not playing for right now, but we're playing for the future. We definitely, as a hockey organization, we still have to strive to be our best every single night. And, you know, again, I think this women team is more than what they've shown. And I just really wish that there was a way to get them to just show that for one game for 60 minutes, because I really do think it'd be one of those character wins where I think they could build off of it. And then maybe we start to see something special.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like we've talked about, they have the tools. We've been on the ice with some of the players and gotten to see what they do. And yeah, it's all there. The toolbox sometimes is just missing a few tools on certain nights. Some gremlin has come in and taken a couple of those pieces that are so vital to the puzzle on certain nights as well. So I definitely agree. My second wish, I'm going to move over to the men's side here. I'm kind of wishing, in addition to our cast of characters that has been so productive in the first half, I'm really looking for that guy or a pair of guys, whoever it will be, to be kind of that person that catches lightning in a bottle in the second half, right? Looking for Veeti Miettinen to kind of have a repeat season of what he had last year. There's a guy that I really like to see, or even somebody, you know, a Kyler Kupka, a Zach Okabe that kind of finds that extra gear or two. And that's not to say, you know, all those guys have had great seasons, you know, to this point. They've done well, but everybody has that extra gear, or just, you know, finding it where Kyler Kupka pops off for 10 goals in the last, you know, 12 or 13 games of the season. Something where as you move into tournament time, you just have this performer that starts to, you know, put it all together at the right time, or have a great second half. You know, it can be more than one player, but I think, you know, especially like we talked about, a player like Veeti Miettinen, who has so much skill, who has a great release, who has, you know, a great offensive upside to his game. And just, you know, he's got 10 points in the year. He's having a decent season by all means, but certainly, you know, what if he's the guy that starts to become the primo scorer that we saw last year and continues to push that into the second half, starts to build on what he did last year? I think that's what the Huskies are waiting for, is that guy that, similar to how David Renick has now been the goaltender to take over, you know, a hockey game. Now you might see a forward that's able to, you know, Zach Okabe the darn thing and pot 4 goals one night, or Nolan Walker last year, the way that Nolan Walker played and was opportune at the right times. Looking for that guy that's going to be that clutch game breaker, if you will, moving into the second half. So, Nick, that's my second one. Don't know if you agree with that or disagree. And I'm curious on number 3.
I agree with that. Another player that I think we could see a lot of, how about Sam Henches? I think he could be a difference maker to this squad. But when he returns, you know, he's always kind of been a guy that can really, as the coach has said, can kind of be, you know, sort of, you know, that kind of like that, you know, kind of like that light fuse, you know, where, you know, you can kind of, you know, wind him up or whatnot. He can sort of change the momentum of the game with one shift. I think he's got that breakout type attitude. I think he has that to, you know, put the team on back for at least a shift type of mentality in that type of his game. And I hope he is good to go for Bemidji, because that's going to shuffle some things around the lineup. And I really think that he could be another difference maker. We've seen that he's got some offensive skill set. He absolutely does. And, you know, if it's him and Miettinen maybe on a line together, because as you mentioned too, Miettinen, if one shot 30 seconds of the hockey game back in March is 2 inches, if not even that, 1 inch lower, we may be talking about how did the Huskies repeat instead of how they get their first national championship. You know, there's just, the hockey can be a game of inches or an inch, you know, per se, when it comes off the post. So I agree with that assessment. My last wish, and this is concerning the Minnesota Wild.
Me too.
How about that? And it's funny because we talked about this off air yesterday, Noah, and I've kind of thought about it a little bit, and I've kind of changed my tune a little bit on this, but I think it's time for, when one of them is healthy and one of them is I think it's time for the Minnesota Wild to give Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy a look. I really do. I know Matt Boldy's out injured. I'm not quite sure when his return is supposed to be. But for Marco Rossi, again, now with Joel Eriksson could be sidelined for a significant amount of time. We talked about some true centers that Minnesota could call up, and we know him as Connor Dewar. Marco Rossi, again, was there as well. So the question becomes, how are they in the faceoffs? Can they handle the NHL game? How is Marco Rossi in terms of going up to the physicality of the NHL's and the command? I do think that now is the time to give him a look. I really do. I think, Bill Guerin, I know, has been very protective of his young assets, and rightfully so. But at some point, I think you also need to give these guys a shot. And I think Marco Rossi, with a half a season under his belt, at least in the AHL, with some help you're going to need down the middle, he's a playmaker. He's a young kid. He's got some decent speed. We know that we've seen some chemistry with him in the preseason. I think he's built to play in the NHL. I think he's got all the right tools, but sometimes you just need to trial by fire. And maybe now, after the holiday break, maybe you come up, you give him a game or two, and maybe even if he sits in the press box for one or two, you don't want to sit there too long, but to try to give him a little sniff and see where he's at. I think now will be a great opportune time while the Wild are in a comfortable position, at least for now, in the Central Division. Maybe he's a spark that ends a 4-game losing streak. Another Wild are on after a 7-game win streak. So that's my wish. I want to see these guys come up, get a sniff, see what they're made of, because I think they could be maybe that missing piece or pieces, Noah, because this team does look good. They had a little bit of a slump here lately, but again, as we mentioned before, all hockey teams are going to go through ebbs and flows or ups and downs, but why not give these young guys a shot? Because unfortunately, as soon as next year, these younger guys, which are making a heck of a lot less money, you're going to be probably light on a heck of a lot more than some of the guys that will be departing after this season.
Final wish for me in the Genie Bottle, Nick, does concern the Minnesota Wild as well. Like you mentioned, sitting first in the Central Division at this time of recording Tuesday night, 19-9-2 on the season. You know what I want? I want the Minnesota Wild to win the Central Division, and I want them to win their first round playoff series. I want them to make this season. I want them to make this season exciting. I want them to be the team that completes the regular season job, carries that into the playoffs, and shuts up all the haters that talk about how they can't win a division and can't win a first round series. I just want it to happen. I want it to happen so bad, Nick.
Why stop there? But why stop there?
I definitely agree, but those people on social media, and you know who you are, I want that to happen, and I just want to.
First of all, was it a voice change?
I don't know what it was, but I want to see Minnesota sports fans have a Minneapolis miracle that actually is a miracle at the end of the day. I want that. I want a St. Paul miracle, Nick. I want St. Paul to come down.
Can I rephrase that slowly?
Yeah.
I want to rephrase that slightly.
Sure.
And the reason why I want to rephrase this, we keep using the word miracle, which means shouldn't happen, which means all luck, right? Now, you and I both know Minnesota fandom has been in absolute hell since 91. Ever since the Minnesota Twins won their last World Series.
Come on. The Vikings have given us. Oh yeah, that's right.
They've given us, some teasing. The WNBA, the Minnesota Lynx, they've had some success. So I don't want to make sure we don't forget about them. They've won, was it 3 or 4 national titles there? But as far as the other 4, it's been dry. And I think at the end of it, a lot of the social media craziness. I mean, think about 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, Jesus, where some of these people are, and how many sports fans have grown up in the state and not experienced, some playoff success from one of these teams. It's been brutal. And I think that fuels it. I really do. The Minnesota Wild right now are the most exciting team to watch. They're the team that has the most promise to do something, which means in true Minnesota fandom, they'll somehow have a 20-game losing streak that will miss the playoffs, and all hell will break loose. And then Kirill Kaprizov gets traded in April for Victor Rask's invisible twin brother and a 7th-round draft pick. So that's just how these things go. But at the end of the day,
that's why I want it to not happen. I want it to be where the Wild put 2 10-game winning streaks together and just snatch the entire Western Conference. and go 4-0 in the first round playoff series against a team that they shouldn't have beat 2 years ago. I want it to happen, Nick. I want it deep in my bones.
Yeah, we all do. We all do. And I think there's, the funny thing is, miracle aside, on the reality, there's a chance that happened.
This isn't 2003, right?
No, and there's some key pieces that are out. Again, yesterday, Jordan Greenway, Jared Spurgeon still not ready to go. Joel Eriksson again leaving with an upper body injury, that doesn't help either. So there's some key pieces that are not in the lineup. And when this team was fully healthy, they were pretty darn good. So I think on the back end, once Spurgeon gets back, I think that will help shore up the defensive front quite a bit. Again, Bruce Boudreau, who is really, you could say the snap of a finger, Bruce, there it is. Thank you, Vancouver Canucks fans. He's really turned that program around pretty quick and given them new fresh breath of life. Wouldn't that be interesting if Vancouver stormed all the way back into the Pacific Division, which could happen because the division's pretty weak,
and face the Wild, who just
face
won
Minnesota in the first round, and just to troll us, Bruce Boudreau gets the victory. We're calling it now here in the Huskies Women House podcast. In 6 games, Vancouver takes down Minnesota in round 1. No, I'm totally kidding. But in true honesty, though, this team does have a chance. And going back to Spurgeon, he was the guy that he looked at as being, sort of the barometer of the hockey club. Marcus Foligno, you could also put him into that conversation too, especially now that's in Spurgeon's absence. This is an exciting group to watch. It's must watch hockey for me. Again, watching Kaprizov, there's always, I get heart palpitations every time the Kaprizov it touches the puck, because you just never know.
That's just because you're a resident of the nursing home, but that's whatever. I mean,
that isn't, the life alert, telling me it's low battery and gave me 2 dips. That's not what that is. But it is reading something. That is, that is the heart going a little bit nuts, because it is fun to watch. He does kind of make you hold your breath. And, every time that he's out there, there's a chance you're going to see something you never saw before. So it's fun to watch. I'll say it that much. But I don't think, and that's the best part, I don't think you have to rely on hope with this squad. I really don't. I think that they have a deep enough team where they will be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. I really do. And I think it's not a hope, but what was it, a couple of years ago when we faced Winnipeg and we pretty much all, kind of dismissed even the series before it even began. There was like the Wild team just has no chance to beat Winnipeg. And they got, was it 5 games and then they got stomped? Is that right?
Yeah, they got stomped in game 5. The one that was painful for me was 2016-17 when Eric Stahl went off. Minnesota was second in the league in goals for per game. And then they lost that overtime game to the Blues, where Jake Allen played the one good game of his hockey career in that series.
That was game 1.
Yeah, and they spiraled downhill and they just could not find a way back up, unfortunately. I think Mike Yeo was still the coach at that point. But nonetheless.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he was. In fact, that was the game where I think it was the overtime winner. I forget it was a defenseman that scored
Edmondson.
2. It was Joel Edmondson that came out. It was a bit of a broken play.
It was like a rebound.
About Jake Allen storming, stealing that game away.
I think the Wild
put over 50 shots on goal.